Okay, good afternoon and welcome to the very first AMDAS learning webinar. We hope you enjoy it. Thanks very much for your time. We've got some amazing panelists from all walks of life in this fantastic sector that we work in, and we really hope you find it informative and enjoyable. My name is Darrow. I'm the founder of AMDAS. We set up 5 years ago, and we're a boutique consultancy focused on the residential sector, primarily in London. I've been in property and construction for 30 years now, hard to believe. I love it. I love the diversity. I love the variety. And last year, in fact, we employed our first year out student ever. And really that was a catalyst to set up this webinar and hopefully provide some guidance and support to young people who have just entered the sector or who are about to enter over the next couple of years. So we've got some fantastic panelists, as I said, to share their journeys and their thoughts on the current market and the future market. Please ask questions in the chat as we go. Let us know which sector you're from, what company, what you're interested in, and we'll try and steer the discussions around any topics people raise. So without further ado, let's introduce the panelists. Kevin?
Hi there, Rob. Kevin McFadden. I work for Morris Rowe, who are a specialist concrete frame contractor. I joined them in January this year. My history is primarily been a main contractor. So I've been in the industry for 26 years and really joined it. My dad was a builder, very much focused me at sort of 16 or 17 towards quantity surveying. And yeah, I primarily worked for main contractors. So yeah, I've just recently made this move. Yeah, Morris Rowe is a specialist concrete contractor, really. So it's been good. It's been a change, and they're part of a wider group of companies now. So yeah, that's me.
Great. Nigel, could you say a few words, please?
Yeah, sure. I'm Nigel Grace. I've been in the industry since I was 18 years old. I'm a bit like Kevin. I followed my father in the industry. He was a developer, and I've been fortunate enough to be on building sites since my first one I went on to. I was 4 years old. My career started mainly after a little bit of a slow start. I spent 16 years working for what is now Lend-Lease. I joined their management training scheme, went through that. I became chartered chartered with RICS through doing a day release course, which Bovis were happy to support me on. After 16 years with Bovis, I then left and joined that well-trodden route from Bovis to join Mace, where I spent 6 years in Mace and ended up being the operations director within Mace, responsible for the commercial sector, working for clients such as Sainsbury's, Nationwide Building Society, what is now Santander, people like that. And then in 2006-07, I took the plunge with 3 colleagues of mine, and we ended up setting up our own consultancy business. We ended up with 3 offices, turning over several £1 million a year of consultancy income for clients such as Amazon, John Lewis, Marks and Spencer, people like that. And then 4 years ago, I decided I wanted to go get back close to projects. So 4 years ago, I decided to leave that business. I walked away from it and set up my own smaller QS practice. And I've been doing that for 4 years now, working for all sorts of clients across the country and overseas, actually, on a lot of projects, a lot of residential projects, a lot of with small developers and some other big guys as well, including people like Metrobank and one or two big names like that. So that's where I am, and that's where I currently am.
Karen from Waits, would you mind doing your piece, please?
Yeah, certainly. Hi, so I'm Karen. I'm a regional commercial manager at Waits, who are a tier 1 main contractor. My journey, I also started in the industry at 18, but essentially by accident. Sort of left school, did my A-levels, wasn't really sure where to go from there, and I ended up doing some temping. Got a role as a site secretary for 2 weeks holiday cover, and here I am 19 years later as a regional commercial manager. So from my perspective on this industry, it's absolutely fantastic, and the opportunities really are there to be taken. And I'm really passionate about how we bring more young people into the industry, because I think we have a reputation for being somewhat dinosaurs, particularly us contractors, and we're starting to see that move forward. And the more of you guys we can bring in, the better it will get. Yeah, so that's me in a nutshell.
Thanks, Karen. Andy, last but certainly no means least.
Hi everybody. Yeah, Andy Timms. I'm a partner at Arcadis. I've nearly 40 years experience in the industry. There's a bit of a theme about not going to university amongst us, we've just realised. So I started straight from school, and I did a day release route to becoming chartered. I've basically worked half of my career for contractors, and the second half of my career I decided I wanted to change, having been chartered for some years and actually worked for a consultancy practice and I've been working consultancy for almost 20 years now. I did 5 years with Turner & Townsend, and I joined what was EC Harris as a partner in 2005. EC Harris were acquired by Arcadis in 2011. What got me interested in the industry, my father was ran a reasonably large local bricklaying subcontract business, doing some fairly large projects. He did all the brickwork on the Royal Surrey County Hospital and the Chertsey Hospital in Surrey, near where we lived. And that sort of got me interested in construction. I was always quite interested in design, and I actually wanted to be an architect when I started out, but I couldn't get a job as an architect, and I got sponsored into a management trainee course with a local construction company. I love the industry. What I really like is being part of teams that create quality built assets, mainly buildings I've been involved with, in the things that will last a long time and make the world a better place, better places for people to live and work and just enjoy.
Thanks, Andy. I suppose I should probably do a little potted history of myself. I did go to university. I was lucky in '92. I went on a course at Salford, which was a thin sandwich. So 6 months at uni, 6 months in industry. Like everybody else, I didn't necessarily want to go to uni, but my parents kind of made me do a bit of a blended route. So I was happy to get good work experience early on. And then by accident, I ended up joining Mace in '96 when they were quite new. A friend of mine had dropped his job, and I took it and moved across construction and then project management. Then I moved to an investment fund and went and bought sites over in Europe for a couple of years. Before coming back, I then worked for Land Securities, running their residential delivery down in Victoria for 5 years. And then 5 years ago, decided I'd try and do my own consultancy and focus on things I enjoyed. Similar to Nigel, where, you know, at some point you just decide what you really want to do for a career and what makes you happy. As a few people have already said, I love property and construction. I love the fact that you're on a job for 6 months or 2 years, then you move in to meet new teams and new characters and building relationships. I love the fact we leave something behind, our built footprint. Not always something to be proud of, but generally I've been involved in some pretty amazing schemes that I'm happy to bore my children with and show them over the years. So we're all really excited to be here on this webinar, and we're now going to move into the Q&A. So we're going to be talking obviously about the industry and moving into it or starting out next year. First question goes to Karen. Karen, can you give us your view on the market next year for new entrants, and has it changed? Is it improving, given all of the COVID and the uncertainty around the economic situation?
Yeah, absolutely. So from my point of view, and I guess the contractor perspective, I think the opportunities are absolutely there. Every year we take in somewhere around 80 sort of trainees across our business, and we're still looking to take on the same number this year, in spite of COVID. And actually, my experience of the market for contractors QSs at the moment is there's a lot of opportunity, and there's a lot of activity. We're really busy in pre-construction at the moment, and that is where we're sort of looking at pricing jobs in the first instance, which obviously requires a lot of commercial input and support. So I think there's really good opportunities there. I would say if you're looking to join the industry, do your homework and think about the sort of company you want to look at, and if you're targeting particularly if you're looking at tier 1 contractors, or you want to go consultancy route, look into and understand who the players are in that market, and what opportunities they offer, how they employ people into their graduate schemes, and really do that homework as early as you can, to start getting yourself prepped and ready to apply when those openings are live. There are live jobs on our website at the moment, so if anyone's keen to get into the main contractor market, please do take a look at our website.
Nothing like a bit of self-promotion for the Wakes business. Kevin, coming from a specialist subcontractor business, I mean, obviously Morris Rowe are now huge, as you say, we're a conglomerate of other businesses that they've bought up. How do you see it from your perspective in the supply chain for next year?
Yeah, I mean, certainly I would agree with Karen there that, I mean, the demand is there, in that work is still we're still securing work. We're very, very busy indeed. Given some of the specialist side of our business, we have a smaller amount of people. Certainly, I think, my personal advice, for someone joining industry, I think for those formative years of if it's a trainee, for instance, or a graduate, the larger tier 1s are very well established. They've got learning and development teams, and I think those opportunities are out there. I mean, certainly from my previous employer, I can see that, at Mace, where I was for 13 years, those programs are open now, and the windows all sort of tend to shut around. It's around now, actually. So certainly there, I think you'll find there's a real depth to what they can offer, and the experiences they can offer, and the diversity of working in different sectors, that potentially with a specialist in your very starting stages, it could give you a kind of a limited background. But that's not to say, actually, now with the group of companies we do have, certainly it's something we will be looking at, because we can get people into different stages, different parts of the job. So yeah. Thanks,
Kevin. Nigel, from your perspective, how do you see it in private practice in terms of general employment for the next couple of years?
Well, I think it's very similar to what Karen has said about the contractor market. I mean, the quality people have always been in demand, I've found, and I think that's still very much the case, and will carry on the same. I mean, we've got some huge investment planned for this country over the next 5, 10, 15 years, with the big infrastructure projects and everything else that the government has on paper committed to doing, and as a result, there will be a demand for people. We have seen an awful lot of people leave the industry through choice. We've also seen, from my perspective, a reduction in the number of overseas candidates that are coming over. Because certainly in the past, I've worked with people from all over the world who've come over to the UK to work. So I think that only just increases the opportunities that are available. And I totally agree with what Karen and Kevin have said. It's all about finding that opportunity, tracking the companies you want to work with, because there's a demand for people, but there's always a demand for places. And as Karen said, there's 80 places on the waits list. How many people are going to go for those? So you need to track them and make sure you're up there, you're applying for them, and you know everything you can about that company. But don't also rule out some of the smaller businesses, because whilst they might not offer you the the formal training and the support teams that some of the bigger guys might have. These guys can sometimes offer you something a bit different, and the opportunity to learn more from projects, learn more from experience, learn more from people that you work with. So I think, there's all sorts of things for the future, and I said I would be relatively optimistic about the future if you go looking for a role.
Good to hear. Andy, anything you'd like to add to that?
Well, I was just going to add, really, I mean, yes, in terms of general business sentiment, we take on about 120 graduates every year and 40 or so apprentices, and we're looking to take on, there's no drop in that for next year. Generally, our early years entrance is about 12 months in advance. So for people looking to join us in September 2021, you probably should have already applied, but you could still go onto the Arcadis website and do the application there. We have a very, very good and well-established training set of training programs for young people. I mean, the apprentice scheme, we put you through a part-time degree so that you can get chartered and get a degree, and and then we also take on non-cognate degree holders. We'll put you through a master's for that to do a conversion into a cost and commercial management degree as well. So what the thing you must do, you need a great CV, and whilst a lot of you guys won't have loads of work experience, you can really make your CV stand out by having a great personal statement and really saying what you're all about.
Definitely. Good advice there, Andy. Good advice. So on the second point now, really focusing on the skills and attributes that younger people need entering this market. Karen, would you like to give us your views on that? What do you look for in your younger members of your teams?
It's a really good point, actually, and I think we take on people from school leavers through to graduates, through to people changing careers, and one of the key things that we try not to do is judge people on almost their abilities as a QS before they've even started life as a QS. So a lot of it is kind of business attributes, if you like. So ability to communicate in the right way, be that through on the telephone, through emails, some of those really basic skills, but how you come across in that way, I think, is really important. I think energy and excitement about the industry, excitement about wanting to learn, enthusiasm to learn, I think is really key. That's something that I think probably turns my head more than anything is someone who comes in and wants to ask questions, wants to learn about everything that we do, and not just limited to numbers on a spreadsheet, but looking wider at building technology, at how the design process works. I think from a specific QS perspective, you probably do need a bit of a head for numbers and a bit of attention to detail. They'd be pretty key certainly in starting out your career. And I think teamworking, I know it's been mentioned already, but one of the great things about what we do is we work in teams, and that's both within our businesses, but also project teams involve a whole variety of people from a whole variety of different businesses, from everyone on this call through to design team, through to client representatives. So being able to be a team player and to influence a team, I would say.
Great. Andy, I'm going to come to you because I know a couple of the points Karen made are pretty dear to your heart from our chats.
Indeed, yeah. I'm going to say curiosity as number one. your career is about lifelong learning. You know, I'm getting towards the end of my career, but I'm almost paranoid about becoming irrelevant. So I make a real effort to continue learning new things. And there's all sorts of, you know, the climate emergency is real, and we all need to get much more au fait with building in a low carbon way. Digital is upon us. We're all going to be doing different things, making much better use of digital platforms going forward. So curiosity is really, really important. Numeracy, Karen said as well, and the interpersonal skill stuff is really important. We have to be able to work in a team. You have to be able to build your networks, and you have to be able to command the respect of other people. That means being able to see their perspective, even if you don't agree with it, and recognize that everybody's got potentially a valid contribution to make. And the other one I'll put is courage. QS is not always the most popular person in a project team, but you must speak up when you think something that is going on isn't right, and you must do what is right. You must be able to have the courage to speak up when you think you need to.
Thanks, Andy. Nigel, from your perspective.
Well, a lot of the things I've written down have already been talked through. But for me, when I've done interviewing in the past, I've done quite a bit with Mace and certainly with my own businesses. You know, the key things for me were passion and enthusiasm. We in some respects, once you were shortlisted, we didn't really look at the CVs. And we really just looked at the person in front of us and look for their passion, look for their enthusiasm for the job, and look for the industry. And I think Andrew just mentioned as well, is a real desire to learn. You know, I totally agree. I mean, I suppose Andy and I are the old two. It hates saying this, but we're the old two in this group. And you know, coming towards the end of our careers, I've been doing it 34 years, and we are forever learning. And that's and you have to learn, you have to develop, and if you don't, you're going to get dropped by the wayside. And it's also been touched before about the team working, but the ability to build relationships is crucial. And I really, really believe that, because you're forever working with people, and it doesn't matter whether you're going up the chain to, you know, directors or end clients, or whether you're going down the chain to even I've had it in the past, you know, the labourers that you've got working, sweeping the floors or cleaning the canteen. You have to have relationships, or you need to have relationships with those sort of people. So the ability to sort of get on with people and see people for who they are is incredibly important. And, you know, I've known people that have really struggled at both ends of that, you know, struggled with the idea of, why do I need to be, you know, have a relationship with that guy over there when all he's doing is sort of sweeping up or filling up the skip. And then the other way, they've really struggled with actually recognizing the importance of the relationship with a client, you know, and it is, as I said, it is so important. That's what I've written down, but I totally agree with the points that Andy and Karen have made.
Thanks, Nigel. Kevin, to wrap up, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think there's a few things really resonated with me there, and I think certainly meeting people who are joining industry. I mean, a huge part of obviously the numeracy, you know, being very good on Excel. We talked about things before this, Rob. You know, there are some core skills that will really, you know, almost be expected that you should have. But to the people I've seen who've succeeded and sort of come in and had an impact, it's definitely your attitude and your ability to communicate, because, you know, for a team to form and to deliver, you know, you need to be able to sort of act within that and deal with people. But a huge part of, a commercial manager's role nowadays is negotiations. So I like to see people who, it's how articulate they are, how they can construct things, because quite often, like Andy said, you know, you might not necessarily go into this discipline really to be popular, because actually, you know, sometimes you are putting the difficult things on the table. And two people can deliver the same thing in entirely different ways. So you do really need to sort of have the ability to connect with people and put difficult things on the table and keep the relationship. And sometimes, you know, certain people can struggle with that.
Definitely good advice there. And I definitely like the point about lifelong learning and curiosity. I mean, when all of us started out, probably, you know, Google, the internet didn't really exist, but now really there's no excuse for the next generation to not go and self-educate, you know, become an expert on Excel. You don't need to wait for a course that your company is going to offer. There's stuff out there. Learn how to communicate and pitch ideas. There's some fantastic resource now that's available to everyone for free. So I'd really echo all of those comments. So the next one is a little bit looking into the future, really. How the panel see the role of the future QS. Will technology change the role? Will modern methods of construction need a different nuance to a QS or commercial leader? So first question, I'm going to go back to Andy on this one.
Okay, thank you. Future role. So certainly from the private practice perspective, what's going to become increasingly important is the ability to use data to help model schemes at the earliest stages of design, you know, when there's very little drawn information available, to find out what's going to be viable for the client, going to make him some money, but to also to minimize the environmental impact and be able to balance the upfront capital expenditure with operating expenditure over the life of the assets so that they're genuinely sustainable. Another thing that that technology will influence, but won't fundamentally alter, is being able to take a lead role in procurement. We need to be able to procure schemes in a way that genuinely deliver a collaborative result. And we actually, at Arcadis, we actually do quite a lot of work, as well as working for traditional end user clients. We actually work for contractors a lot within when they're working in design and build consortia as well. So being able to work happily for a contractor as well as a developer client or a public sector client is also important.
Kevin, turning to you, focusing on modern methods of construction. Obviously, you guys doing a lot of the basement, the heavy civils work. Do you think MMC will continue to influence QSing moving forward as it becomes potentially very specialist in factories and you become a key component for the delivery mechanism?
Yeah, I mean, I think anyone that's really following the industry and the sector and looking at what clients, developers are looking to do, you know, there's been some great reports out there, you know, the farmer report where, you know, we have to embrace these things. These efficiencies have to come. So I think it's definitely going to have an impact, certainly on our sector. You know, I don't feel it biting immediately, but we're certainly starting to engage and find where we have transferable skills, you know, such that we can sort of, you know, stay relevant. You know, one of the things Andy said there is, as long as you're in this industry, it doesn't matter if it's consultancy, construction. You have to be looking at different sectors. You have to be agile and transferring your skills. You know, part of this discussion was around, you know, quantity surveyors, and you know, we're very quickly moved into commercial managers, and you know, it's a wide role. And I think in our businesses and in our career, we definitely have to keep an open mind. So certainly, yeah, we are looking at that. We think we've got skills that can add value. Certainly as the industry moves towards these sort of DFMA or modern methods of construction. Yeah.
Thanks, Kevin. And Karen, how have you seen technology evolving the role at Waits over the last few years, and how do you see the next 5 years?
So I think I probably echo a lot of what's been said already around, you know, MMC is coming, and that's a really good thing for the industry. We need to develop efficiencies and build better, build safer, you know, build to a higher quality, and all of that comes with more and more, you know, kind of offsite and modern methods. some of the more simple technologies, if you like, that we've been embracing over the last few years are things around sort of field tools and enabling our managers to be out on site with the right technology, you know, in their hands to be able to do everything at the work front rather than having to come back to a desk. And simple things like that we've seen make a huge difference to productivity and efficiency on projects. I think one of the key things, and maybe slightly off topic, but around the future role of the QS, something that's sort of come to mind as we've been talking is, I think we're going to need to develop sort of a more robust processes around how we manage the balance between cost decisions and the risk to making those decisions onto the future life of the project. And we've all no doubt seen a lot in the news over recent years around the tragic fire over at Grenfell Tower. And I think that's going to have a really big impact on the way we make our cost-driven decisions going forward. So for me, that's a key focus, and probably very well linked to the MMC pieces. You know, early engagement, getting all the right parties around the table and making decisions early, being able to inform the costs around that, but also continuing to be mindful of the implications to sustainability, to safety, and to quality, which I think we, as QSs, probably need to get more and more mindful of.
Great, thanks, Karen. Nigel, I'm going to jump to the next topic, really. Working from home. You know, a year ago, no one knew what WFH meant. Today, you know, it's I think it's in the Oxford Dictionary now, a new release. Is it a reality for commercial people in construction?
Is it a reality?
Do you think it will continue next year? You know, if we get vaccines and immunities and the world starts to move back towards the new normal, do you think working from home will continue?
The answer to that question is, I hope not, but yes, I think it will. I think with most of the industries, it's going to be a blend in terms of the home and the work. But for me, we've all stressed, all four of us, and I think you, as well, Rob, have mentioned this. You know, the importance of a team environment in construction. Construction is a team industry, and it's so hard to build that team and maintain that team when you are working from home. Yeah. I'm lucky in some respects that a lot of stuff I can do remotely, but I miss visiting people. I miss visiting the sites. I mean, I did a valuation the other week for a job that we're doing in the banks of the River Thames, and I had to do a valuation report based upon the site manager walking around with a mobile telephone. And it did the job, but it wasn't the same. You know, and for me, I look back in my career and, you know, all the things I've experienced, all the jobs I've been on, all the people I've met, but more importantly, all the things that I've learned. A lot of that's come from just talking to people and walking around. And you know, you'll be in a site office and you won't understand something, or you have a valuation in front of you or a variation in front of you, and you say, "I don't understand what is going on," and you go and see the site manager, and he just grabs you and says, "Come on out, I'll show you." Yeah. And that is how you know, we're all about now. Our position or our role in terms of, you know, a commercial role for me is all about delivering value for money, and you need to understand things that deliver value for money. And you know, it's very difficult for me to sit there and go to a client, you know, this is good value for money if I haven't seen it. Sure. So as I said, I think there'll be a blend going forward. I really do, and I think that, you know, there's certain activities that when you need to be shut away, you can do it at home. But for me, it is so important to be as part of that team together, whether it's in an office or whether it's on a site. It's so important. So as I said, I hope it doesn't continue to the same way it's doing it now, but we shall see. Andy, I'm going to jump to you now, particularly from your large scale projects that you tend to get involved with huge teams, often numbering in the 50s and 100s. How do you see working from home in the next couple of years, and importantly, with how much training you guys do, how do you train young people and have this working from home scenario?
Okay, so working from home, or at least working remotely, I've been doing it for quite a while. Through 2019, I was working for a very large company building data centers all across Europe and in the States. And we had international project teams, and it would not have been viable to have got everybody together for every meeting. So being used to working internationally across different time zones on these big projects, doing it remotely was really the only way of making it work. But that doesn't mean to say you haven't got to have a core team of people on this project delivering the work. It is possible to work well as a team remotely or virtually, but it's challenging. It's much easier when you are face to face, and those little snippets of conversations that Nigel was alluding to, they are invaluable, and those are the bits that actually get lost. Going forward, I do think people, certainly in consultancy, will work as a blend from home and from the office. There is a need to go out and walk around construction sites when you're doing interim valuations, of course. Mm-hmm. You can't really do it entirely remotely. But training, I mean, we've been doing a lot of our training using online training resources for many years now. And as long as you're the person that's actually your line manager or your mentor, you're in contact with frequently, I think you can do it remotely. I really do. It just it's just a bit harder, and you really have to make an effort to make it work, and make sure you do schedule that time and be available for the people that want to ask you those questions.
Okay, brilliant advice. So it sounds like working from home or remotely, as Andy said, is here to stay in some shape or form. Kevin, I just last point really on this to you. Obviously, in construction project teams, you've got the site production teams, which typically cannot work from home. They're either on the site, driving the site, or they're not. And perhaps the commercial team, which can have that blended work. Do you see any challenges there with part of the team working from home and part of the team not being able to moving forward in the next year or two as people adjust to this?
Certainly, as we sort of worked our way through this year, as you said, the production guys had to remain there. It was absolutely fundamental. And some of the projects, whilst they went through an adjustment, trying to create more space so it was safe, such that you could accommodate the wider team. So in some instances, we were asked to keep our commercial managers away, and we did see that there were positives, around reporting. There's certain things that naturally lend itself to some peace and quiet, and rather than a sort of a busy, noisy site office. But there are limitations in the same breath. There comes a point where this sector we're in, you have large teams communicating things, and you need to be able to do things quickly, organically, and naturally, and that needs to be people together. It's a huge part of construction. So I'd like to think that we've all learned these sorts of tools are very, very good. Certainly looking at Andy's experience of international, it seems like it's a no-brainer. And even from our point of view, we've started to do things differently, in terms of how we can communicate with sites and quickly assemble people. It's given us a tool that we never used before the pandemic arrived with us. And so I think we will keep these team meetings going. We will seek to utilise it, but I think delicate conversations, complex issues on site, you need your team side by side really working together. So I think the answer to that going around is probably similar to what Nigel said. It will probably be a blend.
Okay. So Karen, coming to you now about commercial leadership. Obviously, you've developed through your career from starting out with, as you said, sort of no specific training, all the way through to a senior commercial leader in a huge business. What do you think? What advice would you give for the attendees to this conference? What are the key things in being a commercial leader that are different to being a, you know, a trainee QS moving through the ranks to being a QS? What separates commercial leadership from a good QS?
It's a really good question, Rob, and yeah, I mean, I've sort of been doing some thinking about this over the last few days in preparation, and certainly my journey has not been a typical one, but I'm not sure I would have changed too much about it. One of the key things for me is really, you know, learning the ropes, and we've talked about curiosity and you know, willingness to ask questions and learn, and you know, really do that as much as you can, as early on in your career as you can, and build your foundation of knowledge. Because what I've found in my sort of moving into a leadership role, yeah, we're looking at a lot more projects in a lot less detail. Ultimately, you know, my bread and butter growing up as a QS was first of all looking after packages in infinite detail, then looking after projects in, you know, a lot of detail, but with guys looking after the specific packages. And now it's, you know, I think the further up the food chain you move, the more decisions you have to make and the less detail you have to make them. So I think really understanding the role as you grow up through the industry is really important, and building that foundation of really strong knowledge to enable you then to make quick decisions, you know, to use all that knowledge you've gained to, you know, you can rely on that and lean on that to help you decision make as you go through.
Brilliant, Karen.
I think, yeah.
Thank you. Anybody, I'm just conscious of time, and we've got quite a lot of questions coming in from the audience. Anybody else want to add to that about commercial leadership and you know, getting through the pay scales and progression scales quickly? Andy, yeah.
I think people should be concerned with developing their career, absolutely, and to progress as quickly as you can. But I think people need to realise that you know, you join the industry, you're not going to be chief exec in 5 years. You do need to really understand how buildings are put together and what built assets are put together before you can be leading projects. So you do have to put in the hard work to really understand at grassroots levels. But in terms of moving forward, you need a broad understanding of the development process and a really good understanding of the drivers that exist for different parties, because you know, a development from end to end involves hundreds and hundreds of people all looking to get something subtly different out of the process and the scheme at the end of the day.
Brilliant. Okay, a bit more rapid fire on the last couple of points. Kevin, best advice received? You don't have to name who.
For me, actually, it wasn't, I mean, the best advice is also the one that's specific to you, because you can read quotes out of a quote book. And I think for me, I was probably halfway through my 26 years when I first worked for someone who was probably the first, you know, person who really sort of made me think about my career and moving things forward. And it was just some subtle changes. It was, you know, some direction. So to sort of answer that question, I think you need to sort of find a mentor. That's something I'd always advise someone to do. And I think, you know, having that through your career and getting that feedback, because there may be things you do well, there may be things you're not aware of. So for me, it was a few particular things that they'd observed, which I won't reveal, but really actually it reset, and actually I seen the value of that almost immediately. Actually, something that was sort of unaware, I didn't sort of perceive it as an issue, and actually it really did help me. So
Nigel, over to you. Best advice received in your long career?
My long career, and I need to go back some way to when I was 19, and I remember this clear as day, and I'm not going to do the full story because people will laugh at me, but at Bovis we had a trainee scheme, and there was a Trainee of the Year award, and you were interviewed by a main board director, and I was interviewed by a guy called Brian Pettifer, who I think a lot of people might remember in the industry. He's a big figurehead within Bovis, and he just said to me, he said, the best way to get respect from your teammates, no matter how old they are compared with you, is ask questions. if you want to, if you want to learn, you want to gain respect, ask questions. You said, because people, they want to know that you want to learn, but also it's a fantastic feeling when someone asks you a question, because they're sitting there thinking, hey, this is great because this guy wants to learn from me. And that stuck with me for God knows how many years now, but I still remember it to this day.
Fantastic advice. And then Andy, if you knew what you know now, would you do anything differently? Or
yeah, very, very much so. I would be a lot less focused on, this is touching on something Karen said actually, a lot less focused on reducing construction cost and much more on genuine value generation, looking at things holistically over the life cycle of a development.
Brilliant, thanks, Andy. Kevin, same question to you. If you knew what you knew now.
I think for me, actually, it was probably a later realization of, I was in a role in a company at the time which really wasn't doing it for me, and actually it was probably part fear to make that first sort of big move, so you've gone through your traineeship, and actually I didn't realize how much I would enjoy. I made a move from a regional contractor moving into sort of central London major projects, and probably there was a bit of a regret there that I didn't realize how different it was working in bigger teams. For me, it was much more enjoyable, and I think it's just something I'd be aware of now. If you're not feeling that inspired in what you're doing, you really do need to seek it out, because actually, when you're doing something that sort of fires you up, actually things just move a lot better for your career anyway. You're more engaged. So I think it's just questioning yourself. Is this the right place? So I think time over again, I probably would have headed straight for the big smoke. Got involved in those big schemes much earlier, which I really enjoyed.
Interesting. Karen, anything you want to add?
No, a lot of it is connecting with me. So I agree with everything that's been said probably so far. I guess the one thing for me from a personal perspective, at the start of my career, I think I was a bit closed off. I think I always felt I had to present a professional kind of, I had some vision of what someone's like at work, and actually a real key thing for me was sort of letting down some of those barriers, letting my guard down, and properly connecting with people on a personal level. So I think for me that's my one piece of my one thing I'd probably change.
Brilliant. Okay, we're going to turn to, we've got quite a few questions in from the audience now, so thanks for that. Because we're recording it, I'm just going to ask for questions, if that's okay. Molly has said, what advice, and we're going to open this up to all four of the panelists, so please just chip in. What advice would you give to a QS going through the APC process?
Well, you've got to, you know the competencies that you've got to hit, so you must focus on those. And before, what we do, we've got a fairly rigorous process. We actually do pre-qualifications, so we don't actually let people go through for their assessment until we think they're ready. So in advance of doing pre-qualifications, my main encouragement is to get your peers to do mock interviews for you and get them to ask you some really tough questions.
I totally agree with that one.
Great advice. The next question is, would you rather take on an apprentice or a graduate? Stunned silence.
I'll jump in on that one.
Thanks, Karen.
I think, from my personal point of view, the people who I have found develop the best are probably apprentices, because they come in, without any expectations in many ways. But when you bring in a graduate, you get that kind of, all of the learning that they've got from university, the way to present a report, or some of those business skills tend to be there in the first place. So So I think they're both really valid routes. I think there's a space for both. I think the younger the better, and if you can get in as an apprentice and get trained up and get do a day release route or something like that, I'd probably be an advocate of that route.
So I guess some element of practical experience, whether that's through fin sandwich, year out, or summer holiday placement, if you're going down a university route full time, or part apprenticeship, part degree, try and get that practical experience in as early as possible.
Yeah,
okay, excellent. We've got a question here from David. Does the panel think that technology tools help attract young candidates, or is the construction sector still mistrusting technology generally? Nigel, have a go at this one.
Compared with other industries, I don't think we trust it as much as we probably should. It's come a long way in the last few years, but yeah, I don't think we've embraced it. You know, when I look at some of the other industries, what they can do, you know, you look at the modelling and all those sort of things, and the what if scenarios. They're a long way ahead of us, and we need to react to it. You know, because if we are going to attract the best graduates, the best apprentices, the best young guys out there, you know, we are living in a world where technology is dominant, and we've got to do something about it.
Thanks. Esme's just asked a quick response back to the graduate or apprentice, which I think we concluded both are really valuable and we need both sets of skills. Esme's saying she started a uni course full-time QS after switching from a different industry. So interesting. Made a conscious choice to join this industry. No experience in QSing or construction. What would the panel's advice be?
So,
go on, Karen.
Sorry. I think, yeah, as Rob said, I think both routes are absolutely valid, and you know, the fact, Esme, that you've taken that bold decision to change careers, to go and commit yourself to a full-time course, clearly you've got the right drive and ambition behind you. So I think I'll probably echo what Rob said. If you can find a way to get in and do some internships, or even just do some site visits, you'd be very welcome to one of our sites if you wanted to come for a walk around and just start building that knowledge while you go through the course. I think you'll come out of it in a great place.
That's fantastic. There you go, Esme. You've even got the invite to get some visible experience on a site direct from Karen. So we can't deliver more than that. I think I'm going to ask a couple more questions as we're wrapping up. I suppose I better ask this one from Mike Davis, because it's Mike's the reason we're actually here. Mike was my year out student last year. He's safely back at university now for his finals. So Mike's asked, what do you think would be the best way for a graduate to present the skills developed during their degree in a CV/interview, particularly focused around Zoom interviews, which are inevitably a little bit harder? Come on, Kevin, have a go at this one.
Yeah, I mean, certainly sort of looking at that, I think someone who's had the sandwich course or a year out, I think it's certainly sort of providing an opinion on your time in industry, because I think it's a perfect blend. If you can get that practical experience and weave that into what you've learned, I think it can demonstrate that actually you've really sort of taken the benefit of that particular route. But the best way to present it, yeah, I think certainly in this forum now, where you're doing it over screen, it's probably slightly harder to read body language and all the other things we look for. So I guess probably you do have to sort of really bring that enthusiasm as best you can, because actually it's a different world now. So I think there are there's some challenges really, definitely, for people who are trying to make that connection at this stage. But I think it's probably definitely sort of bringing it up a level when you're trying to connect over this kind of forum.
Fantastic, good advice there, Kevin. And I think just wrapping up for everybody, I think myself and the panel have really enjoyed it. Just a final word from each of the panelists, really. final messages for all the young people in the audience and beyond who are going to hear this. And you know, Nigel, final few words for you on this industry we're in.
Well, you asked me what I'd change, and my message, I wouldn't have changed much. You know, it's an industry that it gives you so much. I mean, you mentioned one thing I wish I had done more of, I wish I'd done it at all, was work internationally. But we have so many opportunities. You know, we have so much choice. You know, when we're not constrained with working in one place all the time. And it's one of the rare industries where, and I mentioned earlier about the ability to get relations with going with people. You know, it's one of the few industries where you work with everybody from all social sectors, from different countries, different levels within businesses. And for me, it's fantastic, and you learn so much, and you meet so many different characters. And some of the stories, I mean, I bore people with a lot of my stories about when I was younger, of the people I've met, and the people I work with, the experiences we have. It's fantastic. It really is. And I just would embrace it and just make the most of it and really go for it.
Great. Andy, final word from you.
Okay. My final word would be integrity. Do what you say you're going to do and treat other people fairly.
Fantastic. Kevin?
Yeah, very much on Nigel's kind of theme, really. I think it's a fantastic industry. I think if you've got any doubts, I think the variety of people you can meet, the entrepreneurs from subcontractors who didn't fit in well at school, who are now telling stories of how they're millionaires, to the brightest minds who are developing, you know, the designs for these amazing buildings. I think you can work on a really successful construction project and you'll meet such a diverse range of people. It's fantastic. It's a really good, rewarding industry, and yeah, I think it's a great place to work. So yeah,
fantastic. Thanks, Kevin. And finally, to round things up, Karen, last word.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to add too much to what the guys have said already. And it is an absolutely fantastic industry. I think the breadth of roles available, and you know, the opportunities for anyone, be you a graduate, be you a school leaver, you know, it's there for the taking, really. And if you've got the enthusiasm, if you've got the passion for the industry, you'll thoroughly enjoy working in it, in the same way I do.
Great, thanks, Karen. Thanks to all the panel. I've really enjoyed it. I appreciate your time. Thanks to the audience. It's been great. Thanks for the engagement. Obviously, we're all on LinkedIn. If you've got any questions, anything you want to ask us afterwards, either come through me or go direct to the panelists. I'm sure they'll try and help if they can. And thanks very much for listening and watching.